Something has to give. Appraisal is broken. There's no accountability there. There's no oversight. So, and then there's a risk that if you send a strongly worded letter to the appraisers and the umpire saying, get your stuff together, get this done. Well, now you're meddling, and now we're going to tattoo you with a bad appraisal award because, you ruffled my feathers. And
exactly.
Where's the appeal? Who are you appealing to?
That's exactly my point. It's like I tell my clients all the time. It's like, look, I can go in there and I can show some teeth and I can press and show them where they're wrong. But the moment that I force them into a decision prior to they're ready to make one, it's going to be the decision I don't want. John, I am so glad that you're here. You and I have had many opportunities to talk, whether it was at conferences or seminars or stuff like that. And I have always just enjoyed sort of unpacking the theory of insurance law with you. You know what I'm saying? And I often just get lost in the sort of the legal ramifications and all of the different ways that something could go or be argued or presented. That kind of thing has always sort of fascinated me at some level. I wasn't smart enough to go to law school, so.
Or you were smart enough not to.
Or whichever one. Yeah, I can't. But I am so glad that you're here, and I'm looking forward to digging into some of the topics that we've got today. It is going to be an interesting conversation, to say the least. As we were kind of talking before we started rolling here, there's a lot to unpack as the landscape has changed. But first and foremost, you're a new dad, right?
That's right.
Yeah. So when did that happen? Is this your first, or is it's your
first?
Oh,
July.
wow.
Yeah, so, July 30th.
Okay.
Is his birthday, and he is adorable. And I've been running off of pure oxytocin for the last several months. But yeah, unbelievable. All the cliches are true. Totally life-changing. Really blessed, but tired.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah.
That doesn't go away.
Okay. Yeah, this is the new normal.
It is the best job I've ever had in my life. Yeah. And I commend you on that. You're going to absolutely love it. I've never met anybody that walked up to me and goes like, I hate being a dad. You being an attorney, right? And the name of the firm, I know all the names, but I don't know that I ever get them in order right. So I'm going to try Green, Clyde, Wood, and Jones.
That's correct.
Is that correct?
Yes.
I nailed it. Green, Clyde, Wood, and Jones. If you're looking for them, just a quick little plug, go to greentriallaw.com. I am going to say this one little thing here, that if you are a public adjuster or a contractor and you have not gone to the Dragon Slayer seminar, you need to get your hind parts in that classroom quickly, because it is the single best training that I have seen as far as preparing you. It's not just compliance, but it's understanding how the law moves and works in and around an insurance claim. It's single best training I have seen from a comprehensive nature. They get into all of the details of it, and it is great. And so that is one that I've done. And I think you guys have a webinar coming up, or
That's
did
right.
it already pass?
So we have one coming up in November.
What's going on with that? Let them know about that.
It's a 3-hour CE program online, so it should be a lot easier to get to, because the other ones we do are more like 8 hours, because we spend all day there. We have a lunch break, but there's a lot to cover. I mean, this is a convoluted legal environment. There's common law, there's statutes, there's insurance contracts. There's multiple different licenses involved, and then if you make a misrepresentation, it's a felony.
Right.
So the stakes are pretty high. And
Right.
there's a lot to cover. If you want to be a professional and be competent, sharpen your blade as regularly as you can. The lawyers have to do it too. We have to do CLEs. So it's a good way to stay current as well. Because Hunter is board certified. All three of the partners now have spoken at the insurance law section, the annual bar meetings, given CLEs, teaching other insurance lawyers how to do this. Hunter is also on the council, the Insurance Law Council of the Texas State Bar, and an associate editor at the Texas Journal of Insurance Law. And all three of the partners have also published in that. So we're nerds about this.
Yeah,
we love
sure.
teaching about it. We feel like we have a moral responsibility to teach about it. And in our industry, especially on the policyholder side, non-carrier side, knowledge is power, and we have to be equipped, because the people that we interact with on the other side of the aisle may very well not understand. I'm not going to say they're intentionally misleading, although we prove that in court sometimes, but as a general practice, we have to be the ones bringing the knowledge, the truth, the accountability, objective, cogent logic, because if not us, it might not be there in the claim process.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I don't want to get down a rabbit trail right here, but the interesting thing about whether we're talking about the carrier side of the aisle or the policyholder side of the aisle, or if you're talking politically, it doesn't really, that's not so much what I'm wanting to, that's not what I mean by here by sides of the aisles. It's that both have interests to represent.
Well,
right.
Yes, it is an adversarial disposition, just like the court system is.
Right.
It is P versus D, plaintiff versus defendant.
Right. That's what it is. Yeah.
Policyholder versus carrier. And there's a fundamentally zero sum adversarial dynamic in that. Every dollar the insured proves they're entitled to is a dollar that the insurance company has to let go of. And so there are going to be conflicts of interest throughout, which is interesting because the insurance company does owe a duty of good faith and fair dealing. And yet they have a blatant, obvious conflict of interest.
Right.
And so it leads to a dynamic where the insured must advocate for themselves, must have representation of some kind to get a fair settlement in general. There are certainly cases where the insurance companies come out there, they have a competent, well-trained person that is honest, and they write a check within their authority, cover the, pay the claim. That's the way it used to be in general.
In general, I've
before
worked those
the mid-90s.
I've seen that. I know that happens.
Yes.
It's happened to me.
Yes.
I get it.
But the way things have gone, and for reasons that a lot of folks work in our industry know, that is no longer the default setting with insurance claims. It is an adversarial process, and you'll get cents on the dollar if your claim isn't closed without a payment, which many of them are. Millions of them are every year. So it does pay to have a representative, and the representatives have a duty to stay current. So please come to our Dragon's Lair training, or go to CEs, go to Tapia, go to Windstorm, go to First Party Claims Conference. There's a lot of resources out there to get accredited, keep up with it. Even if you don't need it for a license, like if you're a contractor, you don't have a licensing requirement in Texas, you can still go to these programs and be knowledgeable, so you know where the lines are and you know how to stay in compliance.
So kind of my next question here is, let me lay a little bit of foundation before I ask the next question. The question is essentially, how did you get into this? Because I think a lot of the people that get into this on the policyholder side, whether they're a contractor or a public adjuster or wherever they meet, they could just be a vendor that is more that leans more towards the policy. It doesn't really matter what the kind of thing is. It is usually followed up by some kind of moral imperative that exists, right? You know what I'm saying? So was that kind of how you got into representing policyholders? Your dad was a PA, or is a PA. I believe he's still practicing, is he not?
Yes.
So I know that there was some family heritage there, but kind of talk to me about how, if you're going to go to law school and you've got the great, big, beautiful law to go practice, why did you stay at home? What was that thought? Yeah,
great question. It did feel like sort of a prodigal son returning back to my dad's practice area. I think maybe a part of me was like, no, I got to prove myself and do something different. I did corporate law, general counsel, but right out of law school, which taught me a lot about how business owners think and entrepreneurialism. And I'm really grateful that I had that skill set too. But I took for granted how much I knew and had instincts about insurance claims, especially P&C claims. When I was in law school, the former dean of Yale Law School was a guest professor, visiting professor at NYU Law, and he taught an advanced torts class that I took my third year there, getting my Juris Doctorate. And we covered insurance in the advanced torts class, and I knew a lot about it.
Right.
And, and he recognized that, right, and he goes, insurance is the least taught, most important area of the law, especially for lawyers, because so much of attorneys their fees are being paid by an insurance company. A D&O insurance, a liability insurance covers your attorney's fees when you're getting sued for something. And so that's where a lot of that comes in. And yet the lawyers aren't really taught about these unique, special types of contracts that are insurance products.
Right.
They're not your normal contract. And they're subject to their own provisions of state law, insurance code. There's, federal exemptions like with the McCarran-Ferguson Act that don't really apply to any other area of contract or the economy. So, I took for granted how much I knew about it and how rare it was. And I was also passing off cases to other lawyers because I wasn't licensed in Texas. I got my New York law license after graduating from NYU. And so I was like, well, I'm actually missing out on quite a lot of economic activity here where I have a skill set. So it made a lot of sense. Eventually, I just took the Texas bar so I could start actually helping those policyholders and working with attorneys there. But it was a prodigal type of return because I, for several years, was just doing corporate counsel. But it's a good thing I did now, and I don't know that I would have found this practice area, which is really a niche. It's not widely known, and there's some
you're not on billboards. You're not you're not like the personal injury attorneys. I'm not
Right.
saying that there aren't some people in our space that do personal injury
or they advertise like that. There are,
right. You know what I'm saying? But you're not on billboards,
Right.
and a lot of people even in my profession don't know that a public adjuster even exists or is an option.
Well,
for
there's
them.
some states that don't even have an insurance law section. They don't have lawyers that hold themselves out as insurance litigators.
Right.
And so it is a fairly specialized area of practice, a smaller group of demographics. And it's amazing though. In the insurance industry, I've met the most incredible human beings in my whole life. And I think that it's such that it attracts people that are highly intelligent and they have an instinct for advocacy, for fighting back against bullies, for representing people that need the help they couldn't represent themselves. But because there's so much money changing hands, it also attracts opportunistic people. And so there's also some pretty bad people that have been brought in.
Agreed.
But to be sure, some of the most incredible, ethical, hardworking, and intelligent people I've met, and just interesting people. They're musicians, they're farmers, they just do cool things with their lives, and they're in the insurance industry. And I'm grateful to be practicing here. It has been a joy.
I feel like the people that we interact with, within the industry at industry events, John, are some of the best that I have ever worked with, some of the smartest. I don't agree with all of them, obviously. We have different interpretations of what the policy means and says,
Sure.
and I love that discourse. I think that's great. But I know that when I started working with attorneys and had the opportunity to kind of get over sort of and you're going to think this is kind of funny. Like I was nervous to talk to attorneys. I wanted to make sure that I had.
That's good. You should be. Yeah.
I wanted to make sure that I had my I's dotted and my T's crossed, or my T's crossed and my I's dotted.
That's how I felt before I played my first round of golf. I spent a lot of time at the driving range and the putting greens. Like I was, this is sacred grounds. I don't want to go out there and embarrass myself or inconvenience these professionals.
I just wanted to be on point. And when I'm much like many public adjusters, the moment you see any kind of wrongdoing, or I'm going to use the word injustice, right? And I mean that like in all caps. Like if I am texting that, I'm writing that in all caps, the injustice of how some of this gets handled and the way that we throw the term bad faith around, and every time they make a decision we don't like, that seems to be a default value of ours, that this is just bad faith and there's literally nothing that we can do about it. I think that your firm really challenges the veracity of that claim. You know what I'm saying? And how true that really is, because I have learned a lot, first of all, sitting in the classes, then obviously with just conversations about what you really have to have together and what you have had to do. And I digress. I think a lot of people don't realize that you start working the case from the introductory email. This is my letter of representation.
Right.
And you're positioning yourself from that very point. That way, when you get to the end, it's like, we'll get all of this stuff and bring all of this together. You are an eventual destination for any claim I work, right?
It's always possible that the claim goes sideways and you have to get lawyers involved.
Right.
We certainly try to stay out of it until it's absolutely necessary. It's a bona fide dispute and it's at an impasse. You've exhausted all of your non-litigation remedies. And that way, and because we do that as a firm, we feel very good about recovering attorney's fees. because we're only charging attorney's fees when it's a pure betterment and there truly was no other option. Now that limits our market share because there's plenty of firms that are representing policyholders making first notice of loss, and it's always permissible to hire an attorney to do something for you.
Yeah, that's what you're there for.
Yeah, but as a firm practice for Green, Klein, Wood, and Jones, it's sort of an ethical constraint that we impose on ourselves that, if there's a way for this claim to get resolved without us taking attorney's fees on the settlement, we will tell you what that is. And we will wait until, the only exception is the statute of limitations about to run. You have to get a lawsuit on file. So let's
there is a clock running, right? And then I think that that's the important reason for a PA to be efficient, right? Because we're really kind of that first responder. I mean, we're not the doctor, but we are the EMT.
Yeah.
And we can stabilize things quickly in the field.
That's a great metaphor.
And get that thing ready to go. We know a lot. You know what I'm saying? We know a whole lot.
You might not be able to cure the patient, but you can certainly stop them from dying.
Right.
And you keep them preserve their rights as the PA would be, proving their loss and timely submitting and cooperating with the carrier's investigation. And hopefully the carrier does the right thing. But if not, you have safeguarded that client of yours, preserve their rights. And then as a matter of duty, I think if you can't resolve the carrier, the claim with the insurance company for whatever reason, referring the insured to counsel and saying you need to consult with an attorney concerned that your rights may have been violated. Just to find out what your next steps are, what are your options here,
right?
And that inflection point in a claim, whether you're a roofer or a PA, having a conversation like that with the insured is really important, and it can make or break your business. If there's not proper expectations set, if there's a failure to educate or communicate about the adversarial nature of the typical claim process, because if it comes as a surprise to your client that they have to hire a lawyer now, and you as the roofer or the PA or the building consultant, whoever your role is, telling them you're going to be able to get the claim resolved for them, and then they have to hire a lawyer, they're going to feel like you made a false promise to them.
Sure.
So it's got to be understood. If you're relying on your insurance company to pay for the restoration of this claim or to pay for the roof that you want, be advised that they may deny it and violate your rights, and you need to be prepared to stand on your rights and prosecute them to the fullest extent of the law. Right. If a shoplifter gets prosecuted for taking something that's not theirs, the carriers should be for denying a benefit they are liable for.
Absolutely.
And the insureds have to be prepared to stand on their rights.
Absolutely.
I'm not saying they have to on every case. And I would love it if the markets were so efficient that I had to find a different area of practice. But as it stands, that conversation needs to be had every time. I'm not saying every claim needs to be with an attorney. I don't believe that. I think that's false. I think every insured needs to know they have a right to an attorney and they have rights under the policy, and they should be prepared to stand on them.
I think that that's becoming more ubiquitous, right? As opposed to the days of, and this is something that I share with all of my clients, even after it kind of comes into a hindsight is 2020 kind of thing. I said, one of the biggest things that I can tell you as I counsel clients is don't file an insurance claim until you know how much money you want. And I think that's like kind of a moving forward, because clearly what you did is you filed to see how much coverage you had. And that is a big error a lot of times, because because I have learned, right, from a PA's perspective, we are way more successful when we enter the process at the beginning rather than bringing us in once there's a dispute. We can cut lots of things off where there is no dispute when we can be the first notified, right?
If you have a chance as the adjuster to review the insurance policy and to inspect the property loss before the claim is even filed, and you can do that in a timely manner, because the insured still has a duty to report timely. And some policies might specify when that is. But in general, if you're like, hey, I've had a loss, let me call an adjuster right now. Let me call a PA so I know, get a sense of what I'm covered for, what's my deductible going to be, what could I expect.
You may not need that PA other than just to advise you.
Right. And then what is the magnitude of the loss? And the PA should be trained and specialized in investigating claims too, familiar with the International Building Code, familiar with manufacturers' guidelines, familiar with what good workmanship requires, and the difference between new construction and repairs and renovation. So, but if that is the PA, they have that competency, that skill set, they can write a good, thorough estimate of the loss, document the condition of the property, submit the claim, and get reserves set in the right order of magnitude, so that the initial adjustment has authority already to pay. All right. If the reserve is not set properly, then there's this whole internal appeal process. It really leads to some of the disputes, I think, that shouldn't be, because the reserves aren't set properly.
Right. And I can tell you a little bit about how that happens. Now, I don't know that this is, but independent adjusters, back when I was an independent adjuster many moons ago, right? You were probably in law school when I first started adjusting claims. Of course, I don't really know how old you are, so I can't really say that completely.
We should go back. We should go back to the how did I get into this? Because I wrote that whole story of my dad. I didn't get it. I didn't explain that.
Yeah, go ahead and explain it. Why not?
So he was a licensed general contractor in Florida for 20 years, and then became a regional executive adjuster for Allstate when we lived in North Carolina. And I was, I think 11 or 12, would go with him to losses. Sometimes he'd take us to work, and driving around the state and inspecting tornado claims and all kinds of losses to property. And he had a checkbook with him. He could write a check there on the spot, and he would be able to eyeball it and write a check for the rough order of magnitude. At least this is enough to get you started.
Sure.
Once you hire your contractor, let's talk, and then we can supplement this. And we would leave the site having made someone's day and given them hope after a disaster and a catastrophic loss to their property. And I saw him doing that, and I was like, he gets to be the good guy. And then McKinsey Consulting Company comes in and
changes everything.
Everything. Yeah. So in the mid 90s, their work product led to Allstate making very different kinds of business decisions about how they process claims. And I saw that firsthand because my dad's checkbook was taken back. They revoked his authority to settle claims on the spot. Everything had to get management reviewed. They started cutting up his estimates, and it really stressed him out because he knew that these people were being unjustly treated, and it was coming through him because of the management, and he did not like being in that position. It's very stressful for him. His appendix burst. He blames Allstate for that. Maybe it was a coincidence. I don't know, but we ended up, he quit. We moved to Texas. He started a public adjusting firm. And that was when I was in high school. So, again, growing up with this conversation around the dinner table about proper payment of claims and what good construction looks like. I was always going to construction sites with him. And, so I suppose I sort of took that for granted. Like a fish is swimming and they don't realize they're in water, so when I went off to law school, I had other plans, but it ended up being inevitable. Like, this is a area that I should be in. You're born into this. There's only a few second or third generation professionals. We should start a club. Yeah. There's a few PAs and attorneys out there that have come from a family of that. Yeah. Because the industry is not even that old.
You're right.
Profession.
Yeah. Right.
But it's becoming more and more important, more regulated as the business practices change and the claims become more adversarial, and you need to bring more technical skill into the claim process to get a fair settlement.
Yeah. In fact, it's so new, I would say that if this is the only thing you've done, you're probably in your 20s.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like, my good friend Asher Ware, his parents obviously were owners of Paradise Claims, and he's coming up in it doing his own thing.
I love to see it. Yeah.
I do too. And he's great, and
Skipton family.
Yeah. Right.
The new NAPIA president. They're
all of those guys. I mean, there's tons of examples, but it's new. That's not been happening for a long time. Third and fourth generation, we just haven't been around for that many years. Right. So, I find all of that sort of, because my dad was an auto mechanic and a school teacher. Now I do a lot of teaching, and that's sort of the inherent family thing for me, is that we're teachers. Yeah, being an educator. My mom was a corporate educator, and my dad taught high school for 15 or 20 years, right? As an auto mechanic, he taught auto shop, and of course, yes, do I know how to work on a car? Yes, but I don't admit it to anybody, right?
Okay, so can I tell you this story of where my signature came from? Because you mentioned that when I was in the 5th grade, I had an auto mechanic shop class, and I had turned in a paper, and my teacher, this, guy with grease under his fingernails, is, wearing a jumpsuit all day. He calls me up to his desk, and I was like, I'm in trouble. Like, what I do? And he slides my paper back to me and he goes, I reject this. And you need to sign your name like you mean it and that you're proud of it. And he gave me a sheet of paper and a pen. He goes, cover this paper front and back with your signature. And I did that, and I kind of found a groove, and that's how I signed my name ever since the fifth grade. Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, thanks to the auto mechanic shop teacher. So you never know as a teacher, regardless of what your subject matter is, how you're going to impact the life of your students. It's the little nuggets of insight and moral guidance that can go, have lifelong impacts.
I know. And I can remember nearly everyone that every teacher pointed into me, like the first time I heard the name Hitler, the first time, I remember that sitting in class, I was in second grade. I remember when my U.S. history teacher, when he was teaching on World War II, it was like you could smell the gunpowder in the room, and and I know what got us into all of it. And I don't know why it hit me so hard, but like he came from a very patriotic point of view, right? And this is high school in the 80s, right? We're still really in the Cold War at this point in time. We're still hiding under our desk for bomb threats, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
That was what was going on. And just to have somebody unfold those things, and where you learn the life lessons of, for those of us who don't learn history are doomed to relive it,
Yes.
that kind of thing. Those things that sink into you in a way, and how much teachers make a difference. And as one of the teachers in this industry, I'm not saying I'm the best. I'm not saying I'm the only. I think that there's a lot of good opportunities to be educated. However, it's something that is a passion of mine, and I do like to do it quite a bit, and I like to bring people up. So while that is generational in my family, obviously no one was a public adjuster. No one was even messing with insurance, and I have ventured into a territory,
you found it.
right? And it kind of found me at a level.
Yeah.
I just figured I figured that I was good at it, and it's like early 2000s. I was selling insurance, and I was like, everybody talks about it being this intangible, but I don't see it that way, especially when you want it to pay.
I wish more insurance brokers would educate themselves about what happens downstream.
Right.
When a claim is made, what do these products actually do? Because a lot of times they're selling on premium alone, and they're ending up saddling clients with high deductibles, with ACV only roof endorsements, with a managed repair program.
Right.
They're not getting what they thought they were buying, and the insureds might as well put money under a mattress than give it to an insurance company. And it is kind of a racket. Like if you have a loan on your home or your car, or your business, you have to have insurance. You have to pay money. It's like I don't think the government's supposed to be able to force person A to transact with person B. But in this space, it happens. And because of McCarran-Ferguson, a lot of antitrust violations are happening.
Right.
Anti-competitive market practices are happening. It's totally the Wild West. And it's replete with market failures and reasons to litigate. And it's unfortunate that any consumer class should have to litigate in order to get the benefit of the bargain. So
that's the thing. That's it, John, is that they're forced into it. Right.
Yes.
And that really kind of brings into what I was saying. And this is from a business point of view for the audience that I want you guys to listen to this, because this next question that I have is that I realized probably 6, 8, 9 months ago, even after being in this for a while, and this is why I want to talk, and one of the biggest things I want to talk about is the importance of cultivating the relationship with the attorney, mainly because it needs to be part of your business plan, because more public adjusters don't have any reasonable expectation of getting paid, especially when you are not looking at the long game, and that involves the courtroom, right?
And I just saw a LinkedIn post by a defense attorney at the Zell law firm that said, I'm going to start advising my clients not to put the PA's name on the check because of some isolated case out of Pennsylvania where the PA, a bad guy, ran off with the check. Right. But that's fraud. Okay.
Right.
That's
we have
embezzlement.
laws for that.
Like there's already laws for that. You don't have to change your business practice to deal with that. But it would, I think that would be negligence, because the insurance companies are put on notice of the PA's interest. It's a valid, legally protected interest, at least in the state of Texas. And the insurance company might have to pay the claim and then write a check to the PA on top of it because they followed this defense attorney's advice that said don't put their name on the check when they were on notice that they had an interest. And the attorneys for the policyholder have legal obligations when we're put on notice that there's a PA interest. They have to set aside that amount for them. But, and if it's a roofing contractor, they have a lien, there's a letter of direction to pay in the file. Like, those are legal reasons to put the name on the check. But it is a vulnerability. And if you have a policyholder lawyer that is following the disciplinary rules and the rules regarding safeguarding funds that have a third-party interest in them, at the very least, your fees would be safeguarded in our trust account until any dispute between you and the policyholder is resolved, and then dispersed accordingly. But in the normal case, we're the paymaster. The claim's settled. We've got the lump sum settlement. We do an accounting. Everything's signed off on by the insured. And then we directly deposit. We wire the funds. And instead of chasing the insured around, hoping they don't buy a boat with your fees, it comes from our IOLTA account, and we're subject to all these ethical standards. So there's transparency and so forth. And that's assuming we're not representing the PA. We don't represent the roofer, but we still have
legal obligations
and legal, exactly. That is, you can live with that. It's less risky than hoping the insurance company sends you your check or the insured does.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. And so unfortunately, it's becoming du jour. Like, I would say to a new PA, do not go into a new jurisdiction. Say you're licensed here, you want to go practice in Oklahoma. You better have a law firm in Oklahoma that's licensed there. They have local counsel there. They can file the lawsuit the next day if you need to. They can advise you on if the insured's rights are being violated. They can have that next step consultation. They can file a motion with the court to appoint an umpire if needed. You've got to have somebody that can navigate the legal space in any jurisdiction that you're operating in.
Right.
Otherwise, you're hazarding all of your time and effort there, as well as your license, because without guidance, you might not comply. But it's important to have that in your deck. You've got to have at least one appraiser, somebody that's qualified to be an umpire that can make it to that jurisdiction, because you might need them. So just have that whole network in place. But from the PA's relationship with the attorneys, the expectation going into the claim, as I said before, you may need to stand on your rights here. We're going to make a good faith run at this. Let's try to get it settled, but it depends entirely on the insurance company choosing to do the right thing and to settle the claim, to comply with the insurance code, to keep the promises they made in this insurance policy. And if they decide to breach, you have to be ready to take matters to the next level to assert your legal rights. And that inflection point in the claim can make or break your business, because you're a year in a lot of claims, and it's opportunity costs, right? It's sunk costs if they end up just giving up when they've reached an impasse. So you've got three options at that point if you're the insured. You can give up. Okay, well, you've already got claims activity. You're going to have a premium increase. You might get non-renewed. You might as well see this through. Two, go to appraisal if a coverage has been opened. I don't recommend appraisal when the claim's denied.
I don't either.
We can discuss like pros and cons, but that's a decision the insured should make with consultation of legal counsel before a PA or roofer says you should go to appraisal. I'm writing and invoking appraisal for you. That affects their legal rights. And if something goes sideways in the appraisal, that could blow back on you. So you need the insured to consult with an attorney to tell them you should go to appraisal. But only do that if there's coverage, the causation has been conceded, it's within the policy period, because that's an appraisable case. If the appraisal panel renders an award, the insurance company's already agreed they're going to, whatever that is, it's like a liquidated damages clause.
Yes, exactly.
But if there's denial of the claim, coverage issues, a reservation of rights letter that's been issued by the insurance company, appraisal is not advisable. The insured's going to have to pay the appraiser cost, half the umpire fees. There's sort of no timeline. There's no rules of evidence, no rules of procedure, and the law of appraisal is difficult for the insured. And we can get into that subject next, because Texas is starting to regulate this finally. But that's an important inflection point, and it must be trained. It must be taught from the sales teams of a roofing company through the adjusters and the appraisers in this industry, understanding how to educate your insured, how to set their expectations, how to introduce them to lawyers, and having a stable of attorneys that you can trust that are practicing regularly in this area, that you can recommend in good faith. You tell your mom you should hire these guys. They're good, right? That's
exactly
who you need on your team. And, the collaboration with the lawyers is, it's unique because we're both fiduciaries of the insured, and we have different skill sets and competencies, but the public adjuster is essentially an attorney in fact, not an attorney at law. But
Hunter puts it, they actually hack off a portion of the law and let you practice it. That's kind of what they've done.
It's a carve out from the unauthorized practice of law, because you have a license, and it's UPL is referenced in the PA statute in Texas. And, it's interesting because the insurance code provides that either you have a PA license or you're a lawyer with knowledge of property.
Right.
So it's actually, there's more qualifications on the attorneys to be adjusting claims than the PAs.
Right.
The PA, you just need a license. The lawyer, you need a license, and you need to know about property. And so that's something that I don't think is widely appreciated enough. But, the relationship is important because, and for our firm, I'd say most of our clients are referred to us by public adjusters. They have made a good faith effort to prove the loss. The insurance company has come up with whatever their grounds for denial or underpayment. They've brought in forensic experts. The carriers have brought in Hague or Donan or Rimkus or Unified Building Services or some other building consultant to tell them they don't have to pay this claim.
Yep.
And regardless of what the insurance team has done, they're going to say, thank you for submitting your meteorology report or your pictures, your estimate, your contractor bid, but we're going to rely on our experts. Sorry. And by the way, we're going to raise your premium next year. So,
yeah, right.
And
as a parting
and by
gift.
the way, we're going to lobby the state lawmakers and tell them that you don't get attorney's fees if you have to sue us anymore. It's like all that is happening. So, when those things happen in a claim, the insured's only real recourse, it's not giving up. It's not appraisal. It's sue the bastards.
Right.
Right. Take them to court. My late great partner, Bob Green, would say, you can't fix stupid, but you can give it a court date.
Yeah.
And that's sometimes what we have to do. And we're like, tell the insurance company, we're not trying to convince you anymore. We're going to go convince a federal judge and a jury of our peers.
Right.
That you should have paid this claim a year and a half ago. And that's why we're also going to seek prompt payment penalty interest, attorney's fees, bad faith for knowingly violating our insured's rights and all of that.
Well, so much of what I'm seeing right now, and as we dig into the appraisal process and some of the laws that are going to be coming out and all of that, I have found that there are things that a public adjuster handles, and they can handle them well. They understand sort of like the procedural portions of it, right? I have no issues navigating the appraisal process with a carrier, none whatsoever. It's really more so what it means when we enter appraisal. What sort of things are we giving up? What are we conceding? And that's why I think that the cultivation of the relationship with the attorney is good. And also sort of in this climate and environment, we are seeing a degradation in our expectation of being paid, right? Because if all they have to do is say no with no evidence, no nothing, and then we are forced to go into alternate remedies, whether it's appraisal or litigation, whatever the case may be, mediation, arbitration, depending on what state you're in, those kinds of things that I believe, I have often fallen into the trap of, I've got one more argument, one more thing. This is the place where you're wrong. This is where you don't get it. And you get into this exchange with the carrier that's back and forth, and you're arguing with somebody that even if they agreed with you, can't overturn the decision that's been made by the carrier, right?
At that point, you're just losing hair and sleep over nothing.
Exactly.
There's diminishing returns, especially when you start using adjectives instead of just nouns.
2-syllable words.
That said, sometimes that prose can be hurtful to the client. I mean,
Right.
I've had, with all good intentions, the carrier's team saying, well, you need to be able to prove that this happened. And the roofer saying in an email, there's no way in the world you could ever prove that. Just from a theoretical perspective, there's no way to prove that. Now that's in the claim file. The insured's team saying we can't prove it.
Right.
So I know you were trying to help, but you didn't. In fact, we had to deal with that when we go to court.
Right.
How do we address this thing that was said in an email? So knowing when to pass the claim on is really important. And the proper type of healthy relationship with with insurance attorneys is certainly not one where every single claim you're working on is with this one law firm, right? That's
right. You got to spread that out. Yeah, you got to spread that out a little bit.
Well, barratry is illegal. It's a felony. Case running is illegal. Paying anything of value in exchange for a referral is illegal. For the lawyers, it's a felony. It's something you can get disbarred for. And so we really have to be careful with that, especially when private equity is getting into the claims game and financing litigation. And now I think there's firms that are offering to pay a percentage of your estimate when they get retained on a claim. That's just a kickback by any other name. It's barratry by any other name. And it's a very serious issue. So there should be no money changing hands between the law firm and the PA firm.
Gotcha.
It's one thing if you're doing expert witnessing work for a law firm and you're getting paid on an invoice for
right.
that. Yeah. And that is wholly unrelated to any claim in which you've referred them a client that's a client of your firm, and you're getting paid a contingency fee if it settles.
Right.
Right. And so, you just have to be really conscientious about that. And we do, we've actually been dinged. Some PA firms have been like, well, we're not sending you clients because you guys never send us appraisals. And my first thought is that's a quid pro quo we're not going to do.
Right.
And two, we don't have claims that are ripe for appraisal. Not very often. We're a trial firm. We're litigators. We get referred the claim when everything else has been tried. That ship has sailed.
Yeah, that ship has sailed.
And we're now here to take them to court and to do things that only lawyers can do.
Right.
All the non-licensed required stuff has already been attempted.
Right.
So
and that's just how y'all are set up, right?
Correct.
I mean, that's your
That's
motivation.
our position in the market. That's how we're set up. That's how we operate. We're not signing up clients that could have gone to appraisal. So I just want to be clear to all those PAs out there. Don't expect an appraisal referral from us. That's just not something we have a lot to give out. And that's not why you should send us a claim. We'd like to earn your business and, by being experts at this. But at any rate, you could forecast a good working relationship with a first party litigation firm. What you should expect from that is, assuming you've sent them any number of claims and not just a one-off, but even in those cases, you should get responsiveness from the insurance lawyers. Call in, ask them what's the status of a claim and of a case, and they should tell you exactly where it's at. They should be willing to share anything that's not privileged or confidential. You're on the claim, you should know. We like to edify the PAs that send us business so that if the insured calls you, or if the roofing contractor or mid contractor calls you, you can give them an update and you're in the know. When we're getting settlement offers, with the advice and consent of the insured, we're talking to the roofer, the PA, and saying, what do you think about these numbers? When we're doing discovery, you were there. Now, we try to go to the property ourselves. We get experts to go as well, but the PA is oftentimes they were there. They saw what with their own eyes. They saw what the carrier's experts did or didn't do. And so we're going to look under the couch cushions for bad faith facts. We want to hear it from you guys. You are closer to the loss. And so we work really closely with you. You should expect that. You're not just going to send a case and forget it. We're going to call you. We're going to ask you to explain your work product.
Yep.
And ideally you've developed your claim file and done your job. So when it comes time to settle, everybody's comfortable with your fees getting paid too. But,
exactly.
But, I think anywhere between 6 and 18 months between getting a client signed up and being able to settle a claim. And during that process, you should be getting periodic updates about where things are at.
Exactly.
I would say never send an email to a law firm with a list of cases you've referred to them, because the carriers will discover that and start taking depositions across that whole list on any one claim. So keep them separated.
Right.
And don't create any impressions that. So forecasting, when are you going to get your fees paid? That's about the timeline, about 6 to 18 months after we're retained. It's partly subject to state law. We have a 2-month 60-day notice period between sending in essentially notice of what we're going to sue over and before they even have to respond. And then we've got the court's docket and the schedule, the trial schedule that we're not in control of. It that sort of drives the timeline to settlement.
So from a forecasting standpoint, I guess really more what I was driving at, just for clarity's sake, was it's got to, as an owner of a PA firm, sending stuff to an attorney is part of my business model, right?
Yeah.
So there's going to be a percentage. And what I have to do inside my firm is I have to set lines of demarcation, for example, or of we're not going to go any further. I've made all of the reasonable arguments. We've exposed these violations in our opinion. They've now violated the UCSPA. They violated the Bill of Rights. They've done all of these kinds of things. At this point in time, it is clear no teeth that I'm showing matter. And so I am going to have to turn this over to somebody. And for me, I generally I'm going to start talking to an attorney somewhere around 60 days. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you get an initial response. You kind of see what's their vibe here. What are we working with? Are they open-minded? Are they being disrespectful already?
Right.
You know, are they hostile in the first inspection? Like, okay, here we go again. I know this guy. I've worked with this guy before. He's fair and reasonable. I think we're going to get this resolved. Versus he's already calling us a fraud. Like, okay. But I think it's a judgment call, and it's not easy to make, especially when you're intelligent, ethical. You want to be the hero. You want to help the insured, and you feel like if you could just convince this person. But knowing when are you talking to somebody that doesn't want to understand? They're not open to being convinced.
Right.
They have motivated reasoning. They're using fallacious logic. If they're not, if they don't have that kind of an orientation where truth and fact and logic is taken for granted, it is something that you assume is common ground, then you could be wasting your time.
Right.
And so you got to make a judgment call. And there's also PAs that will say they're going to hire an engineer. They're going to hire an architect. They have a budget for that. They feel like if they could prove the loss, then they could get settled. Again, you don't have to do that. That may go beyond the requirements of properly earning a PA fee and proving the loss. With just pictures and inspection reports and proving that the claim happened, proving that it's, something the carrier should pay without having, say, proof to the level of scientific rigor that you would have in a courtroom. The insurance lawyers should absolutely be willing to bring those forensic experts in. But,
right. And that's generally where I leave it.
Yes.
That's where I leave it. I do what I can do. Now, I don't have any problem with hiring an engineer within the claims process where it's appropriate. We're talking about a large commercial building, some industrial that's going on. We're not talking about bent shingles.
Yeah.
Okay.
The insurance policy may very well pay for those experts. Right. They could very well cover the architect's fee to come in and give an opinion about what's this going to cost to fix. A lot of insurance policies say they do not pay PA fees if they don't try to ban the PA outright, which is something that NAPIA is lobbying against.
Sure.
But that goes to show you the value of a PA to the insured. The insurance company wouldn't try to outlaw you guys if you weren't helping the insured and hurting them.
Exactly. So in Texas, appraisal has become ubiquitous within the insurance world.
Yes.
It has, and recently, and as much as the claims industry is, and I use that sort of in quotes, the claims industry, as it has become sort of really ever since the pandemic, there have been some tightening of the screws, if you will. It has just become a more arduous, difficult adversarial process than it was maybe even 10 years ago. It has just become something that is just a lot more combative. It appears that appraisal has become kind of an easy button, and it has more or less been treated as sudden death overtime for the claim rather than the appropriation of the process of what appraisal is supposed to accomplish.
Yeah.
And so we've had a new law that was recently, we had a new bill, a Senate bill that was signed into law, Senate Bill 458. There are still it is still materializing as far as exactly what it is and what it's not going to do. So in your opinion, what has it helped, if anything, and what has it complicated?
Well, it's complicated a lot. But I think it's generally helpful that we have the conversation with lawmakers and with the regulators about what's going on with appraisal. I appreciate that there is legislative intent to try to codify best practices, but the bill that was passed had a lot of issues with it. It had a lot of loopholes and ambiguities, and we brought these up. Various organizations brought this up during the drafting process, and nonetheless, here we are with SB 458. Now, to be sure, it only relates to residential and auto appraisals. So this doesn't apply to commercial appraisals. And it delegates to the insurance commissioner promulgating rules governing the timing of appraisal, who can be qualified to do appraisals, And the rules themselves that we saw, the draft rules, are really problematic. And it's good they're taking feedback,
Right,
because
okay.
people that practice in here, and I think there's probably consensus from the insurance defense side,
Sure,
and the policyholder side, that these rules are an issue. We've got to work on them. So, I mean, one of the ironies is that the process under the new framework could take 390 days, and it's supposed to expedite appraisals, and yet full compliance with the rules could actually take over a year.
Right.
And there's like an infinite umpire appointment loophole that could drag this on forever, theoretically, within the framework of the rules. So, it's got to be wordsmithed some. My firm submitted comments on it. I know that a bunch of groups did. The American Adjuster Association, which I'm a part of, was extensively in Austin educating on this. And a lot of the things that organization forecasted actually materialized. Mm-hmm. So it's a little bit of a Cassandra thing. Like, we told you this is going to happen.
Right.
But here we are. So, my law firm has comments on it. There are lots of LinkedIn discussions about this, but appraisal to begin with was problematic in Texas. So the status quo ex ante, this Senate Bill 458, was a problem. And, we could live with it. It wasn't the best, it wasn't the worst, but it was challenging already. There were no rules of evidence for appraisals, no rules of procedure for appraisals. It's just like one paragraph in a lot of insurance policies saying, if you and we disagree as to the amount of the loss, each one of us can, invoke appraisal, and you have 20 days to appoint your appraiser. And then they, if we can't agree, they get an umpire. Any two of the three agree on the amount of loss, that shall be the amount of the loss. I'm paraphrasing, but that's usually how.
Not really.
The language.
That was almost verbatim.
So, that's the way it was, sort of an informal, not resolving all of the disputes, but the issue of what's the loss amount. Right. And
what is loss? Is loss an amount of money? Is loss a magnitude?
Loss, damages, thus it's really money, because an insurance policy reimburses.
It's offset by money. Right. Yeah, loss is offset by money. So it all relates to money.
The quantum of loss, the quantum of diminution, whatever it is, to the insured asset. That is covered by the policy. So the amount of the loss is what was lost by this casualty event that we insured against. And but it's fun. We can metaphysically get into what does that mean? What does causation mean? I mean, this has been debated for 1,000 years.
Just a practical example as I get to the edge of my chair here, right? Because I'm about to, because this is a tipping point for me, right? This is where things either get really, really good for the insured or can go really, really sideways.
Yes.
Especially when we start invoking appraisal and what can and can't be done. Most of the time, what I'm seeing is where the carrier, right, just chooses to not answer or deny, or they'll write a different version without a formal denial. So we have written an estimate for a full roof replacement, or have supplemented with one, or they have come back or have initially written with a partial, right? We're going for a full, they're going for a partial, but they just go, hey, we only owe for direct physical damage. And often I will see them send the excerpt from the policy, that excludes wear and tear, but often omit, and I think it's lack of education, at least I'm assuming that there's an ensuing loss provision on a lot of that, or what it actually takes to provide access and egress to initiate the repair. The decking is rotten. No, it wasn't damaged by hail. Nobody's suggesting that it was damaged by hail, but in order to execute the repair, this is going to have to be addressed, right?
Yeah, I think appraisers can do a lot of really good work. You can qualify your awards. You can say we only considered X, Y, and Z. So that leaves open that there could be other things that weren't appraised. Yeah, because, one of the risks of appraisal is if you get a good appraisal award, the carrier is not going to pay it. They'll find some reason not to. You get a bad one and you're stuck with it. Mm-hmm. And it's really hard in Texas to set aside an appraisal award. It's got to be fraud, accident, mistake, and that doesn't mean what you think it means. It's not like, well, you made a mistake, you didn't measure the roof right, or you didn't see how many layers were in the roof, the replacement cost is going to be more. No, they mean you appraised the wrong address. right?
Right.
That can be set aside.
Right. Gotcha.
You forged the signatures of these other people. That's a fraud that could be set aside.
Right.
But short of those very rare circumstances, you're kind of stuck with it. Now, the appraisal might be inevitable. If you have initiated a lawsuit against the insurance company and they invoke appraisal in response to your lawsuit and a court orders you to go to appraisal, then you have to. And in that case, though, you have court oversight, or in the case where your counterpart won't agree with you on an umpire, now you have to file a motion with the court that is in the district where the loss happened and have the court appoint an umpire. In which case you can have some judicial oversight there. Like, Your Honor, they're going off the reservation here. Can you order them to expedite their work? But short of that, sort of lawyers involved already, it's a court appointed or court overseen process. There's no structure around appraisal, and that makes it very risky. As a lawyer, kind of an allergic reaction to it. I want my clients to be able to have their day in court. It can forfeit their legal rights. And frankly, there's no time limit to how long an appraisal panel has to do their work. They're just racking up a bill the whole time. They get paid regardless of who wins the claim or who gets paid. And there's a conflict of interest there. They have no incentive to finish. The longer they work, the more they get paid. And then the appraisal panel working does not toll the statute of limitations from running. So your client could lose the right to collect the appraisal award because the panel took too long and no one told them, you only have so much time to bring a lawsuit before your rights are forever forfeit. So there's a problem in the appraisal industry right now, a lot of problems. The Texas common law didn't help. State Farm Lloyds versus Johnson. It's a textbook example of a poorly worded decision that breeds litigation. It sort of muddied the water around appraisal in 2009. And it sort of leads to unfettered action on what appraisers can do in an already under or unregulated industry. That the question of what appraisers can and can't do is still unanswered today, just as it was when the State Farmers Johnson case was decided, with the exception of the appraisal panel cannot make a determination of cosmetic versus functional damage. That's not for the appraisal panel to decide. That's a coverage issue. So if it's damaged, you're appraising it. Don't try to interpret what made that damage. Just go and observe damage, and that's your loss, okay? And that was per Tippett v. Safeco and the Fort Worth Court of Appeals. Another issue with appraisal as it is the volume. So insurance carriers have tons of appraisals. The insured has one in their life, maybe. Same with hiring lawyers. I mean, insurance companies are always hiring lawyers. So the insured, it might be the first time they've ever hired an attorney. So the knowing what you're doing, the carriers they have a sort of a portfolio of appraisers and umpires they work with. They know the drill. They know what's expected of them. They know what they can get away with, and they kind of work in concert to tip the scales, I think, in a system that wildly disfavors policyholders. And no one knows it's really happening because it's not in the public record. These are informal, closed door meetings happening in the appraisal process. So that and the fact that it's very hard to set an appraisal award aside. There's a big presumption in favor of enforcing that. And courts often want to clear their dockets. And so if they can settle this claim through appraisal, they will. They'll issue an order.
They should.
Yeah, get out of here, go appraise this.
That the policy's provided for it. Why are you in the courts? I mean, and some of that I get, right? Some of that's not lost on me. I mean, but do you see it becoming more of a shield for the carriers than it is a benefit for the policyholders?
Yes.
Is that kind of the deal?
Well, I saw this. In the commercial context, you got a large loss. The carrier doesn't want to pay it. They'll invoke appraisal to kind of like, let's cabin this.
Yeah,
I don't want to go to a jury. I don't want to have to deal with all that. I don't want to get experts involved. Let's just use some appraisers to figure out how much this costs.
Right.
They're likely to get, unless the appraisal panel is itself getting experts or really good, right? And there are some awesome appraisers out there. They're experts at this stuff. Unless those conditions are met, the appraisal panel is not going to prove up a damages model of the same value as a law firm that specializes in insurance law that brings in forensic expert witnesses to calculate the amount of the loss. So the insured's not going to get, in general terms, the same number, the real value.
Yeah, the carrier knows that.
Yes.
Like if you're asking for $100,000 and they're offering you $2,000, and it's like, well, there's one thing the carrier knows is that even if we go to appraisal, it won't be $100,000. More than likely, there is a good bet
they're going to compromise somewhere
that this baby gets split in some kind of way, right? That's what's going to happen.
Yeah, and there's a question about the qualification of umpires and appraisers. The insurance policies don't usually say enough if they were trying to police this. I mean, they'll say something like impartial or disinterested or competent, which, fair enough, okay, meaning they should not have an interest in the outcome of the claim they're appraising, right? They need to be arm's length from that. But that can also breed litigation. I think the Supreme Court of Colorado really messed up appraisal in Colorado by introducing a sort of retroactively, did the appraisal panel have some taint to it such that, now the insurance companies are paying the appraisal award and then suing the insured for that money back and suing the appraisers and anyone else involved, saying you had a biased appraiser or there's something wrong with the process. And now you have an unfunded defense. You got to defend yourself against whatever the allegations are. It's tough. So you don't want to have litigation over the requirements or the qualifications of the appraisal panel. That needs to be clear. And another reason why we had state legislative intent to address it. So we could talk about the statute now, because that's the law of Texas now. And we're taking rule-making comments on it, so we still have room for that.
So, I mean, kind of that's what I want to, so I want to drill down on it's because we're running short on time. So I want to get to that.
Okay.
Because what I'm seeing is that appraisal is already being weaponized. They are sidestepping the due process of adjudicating the claim within the boundaries of the policy. That's what I'm seeing.
Yes.
We're just going to say nothing at all. We're going to let you force it into appraisal, and we're not going to adjudicate it one way or the other. They're going into appraisals left, right, and center with absolutely zero evidence, nothing to impeach the evidence that was offered by the homeowner during the claims process. And now we're here, and my concern is that SB 458 doesn't solve any problems. In fact, it only causes more problems, and that's rather opinionated at this point, and it is a hot take because I don't really know how it's going to wash out.
Appropriate take, because we've said this to the insurance commission in Texas. The TDI, I should say, there are problems with this proposed regulations. I mean, 1 year from the date the insurer gives a policyholder notice accepting coverage, that's your new timeline for invoking appraisal. 1 year from the carrier accepting coverage. What if the carrier denies coverage? Does that mean the year time limit is waived? Does that mean it doesn't ask count for it now?
Yeah, right.
So there's just silent to that. And that does depart from Texas law currently. Like it or not, you could invoke appraisal at any time. You might very well get appraisal invoked way after a year after notice of coverage is accepted. Complex claims might take more than a year to address, and you don't want to have to invoke appraisal like a use it or lose it. I mean, I like use it or lose it as a general rule. If you haven't invoked appraisal by the time on a 542A storm claim, if you haven't invoked appraisal by the time you get that notice of loss, you got to do it in that 60-day pre-suit notice window, right? You got to do, and if it's not a storm claim, you got to do it, in the answer to your lawsuit.
Right.
You got to do it right then. Otherwise, waive it, because it's really abusive of the appraisal process to do that later in court when it's a way of baptism by appraisal, right? They're going to get away with all the bad faith that they committed by just invoking appraisal really quick. Let's pay that amount and be done with it.
Well, so TWIA's already got those laws, which they're kind of, set aside from 541 and 542. They operate in sort of a different sort of arena, which is the Texas Wind Insurance Agency. They've got, and theirs is you've got to file it within 1 year. They've already got that written in their policy. Further, they say if you don't like what we come up with, appraisal is your only option. And the weird thing is what they come up with there is no predetermined opportunity within their rights of what the policy provides for them to even write an estimate, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't have any problem with them conducting an investigation. I would expect them, and an estimate should be part of it, but it's got to be part of it and stem out of it, not just this is my wild stab at what I think it might be.
State Farm has ludicrous appraisal provision in some of their homeowners policies that basically says you have to give us an itemized list of everything that you're appraising. And that's the point of the appraisal, is to figure out the scope of the loss. So it's sort of like an intellectually impossible, hurdle to jump through. How do I tell you?
They're hammering you
in
down.
advance?
They're hammering you down on what you're claiming.
12 nails, 24 bundles of shingles. Like, how does the insured know that?
Right.
That's what the appraisal panel is supposed to do and convene on and get consensus around. 2 of the 3 must agree what the loss is. So, there's a lot of problems with just enforcing these appraisal clauses as are. I don't like that as a loophole. It would be bad faith to do this unless we wrote it into the contract and now you agree that we can do this.
Yeah.
So, but the new regulation, there's like a rule around replacing your umpire, right? If the umpire is engaged, the appraisal award must be issued not later than 180 days after the umpire is selected or appointed. If an appraisal award is not issued by the deadline, the appraisers may select a new umpire. Now, what does issued mean? Like submitted for review? Each of the appraisers
Right.
did. Does it mean signed by everyone? If the appraisers can't agree on an umpire, now we have court-appointed umpires. That's before the law? Are courts still allowed to do that?
Right.
Is it only the appraisers can put an umpire on? What if the appraisers can't agree anymore? We got to have court-appointed umpires.
So it looks to me like they're going to use case law to establish these guidelines and rules. That's what it looks like to me, and that's probably not the best way to go about it.
Well, they have to take an open comment. So we filed comments, and trusting the process that will close the loopholes that way. But again, an issue is at day 181 after the 180-day deadline. If the umpire is he automatically removed? Do you have to get both appraisers to remove that umpire? Do you need the court to do it? There's no process for this spelled out in the regulations. If one appraiser selects a new umpire while the other signs an award with the tardy umpire, is that award valid? Like, how does this, what if there are 2 umpires like, wait, I didn't finish yet. I need more time. Well, they've already appointed me. Well, who's too many cooks in the kitchen now?
Right.
So then there's the excessive timelines under SB 458 and the regulations. Appraisal is supposed to be faster and less costly than litigation. Under the draft rules, the process could stretch out for over a year. 30 days, parties have to name appraisers. The policy usually says 20. Within 180 days, appraisers must attempt agreement on the loss. Within 210 days, an umpire must be selected. The umpire then has 180 days to issue the award and practice. Standard residential appraisal could last over a year. Yes,
that's how you get to 390 days really quick.
And then there's the infinite umpire loophole. The appraisers can replace an umpire every 180 days without limits. That undermines the entire purpose of appraisal. And again, the appraisers are getting paid by the hour. Okay. Oftentimes, they're getting paid by the hour, if not a flat rate or something. So you can't have a contingency fee appraisal compensation award. So, the longer this takes, the more they get paid. That creates a conflict of interest with the insured.
I know this is going to be a really hard question, but I kind of need to bottom line this here. If you were to make it exactly the way that you wanted it, do you know what I'm saying? Like, it's not just from a clarity standpoint, but from an executable law. You understand what I mean? It's one of those that it's not so impossible to figure out what it means. How would you make 458 sort of usable and friendly to both sides? Because I want to defend the fact that the carriers have an interest, right? I know what side of the table I fall on.
Yeah.
But they do have an interest, and our economy hinges on healthy insurance companies. Otherwise, we couldn't own half we own.
Yeah, I don't want frivolous claims being paid. I don't want, carriers do deal with insurance fraud from policyholders.
Sure they do.
The most common form of fraud in America. They've got to be vigilant about that. If I owned an insurance company, I would have to have my own SIU, and I'd have to be wary of false claims. So respect that, and we need them to stay solvent. That's super important to the economy. But I think both carriers and insureds would benefit from an efficient appraisal process because nobody wants to call an attorney. We only get called when things are going badly usually.
Right, yeah.
And so as much as that's against my own interest, I'd say I would support an efficient appraisal process here. If I had my way, there would be fee shifting. The insured should not have had to do this.
Right.
So if that appraisal panel...
Can we agree on that this should have been handled in the claims process?
Yeah. If the appraisal panel comes back and says, this is $100,000 and the insurance company had not offered more than $20,000 throughout the entire timeline, and maybe there's some threshold where that was such a betterment that sort of proves you violated the insurance code the first time. You broke your promises the first time.
It should prove a lot.
Yeah, you misrepresented the benefits or the damages or something to get it such a delta from what this appraisal panel saw. So that should be legally actionable in some way. And the costs of the appraisal should be borne by the insurance company. Because they essentially forced the insured to take that time to spend the money.
I agree.
Just to prove a loss that the carrier should have paid in the first place. There should be clear timelines for when an appraisal award has to be rendered. There should be sort of automatic procedures for appointing and removing umpires, for forcing the issuance of an award that also is flexible enough that a complex loss, like in a commercial context, the appraisal panel can mutually agree to extend the timeline. But I'd say giving the parties more control over that panel, having some rules of evidence, some rules of procedure for how appraisals go down, and some framework that is agnostic as to outcome, but is forcing the liquidation of these issues, forcing the resolution of these issues, because that's the whole point of the appraisal clause, is to be like a liquidated damages clause. We can't figure out how much this loss is. There's a mechanism for that, and this panel is supposed to issue an award in a timely manner.
Exactly, and they're appraisers. They're not adjusters,
Correct.
Right? They're not adjusting the loss, which is basically most appraisers meet at the loss, or when they get a loss, it's what they would have done if they had been assigned the loss as an adjuster.
Yeah.
They're not looking at it as an appraisal or the dispute that's in hand, right? And one of the things, even in the State Farm clause that you had referenced earlier, one of the things that it says in there is that the appraisers meet and discuss and must appraise each itemized item that was out there. They have to appraise it. And then when there's a dispute, then they pick an umpire, which is different. Generally, we pick an umpire before there's a dispute, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, so there's some differences there, right? And I'm seeing these things come out and play out. And that's what I am trying to, as a public adjuster, when I advise clients, are looking at the opportunity or possibility of how this is going to play out in appraisal, right? Mm-hmm. So I have got to, in some way, get a little bit of control of when this happens and how this happens, because my whole thing is to control the narrative, right? And the more that I can maintain control of the narrative, the better off the insured is. And I want to play fair with the carrier. I don't think that they owe $1 more, but they don't owe $1 less either. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, something has to give. Appraisal is broken. Okay. We just got a call from an appraiser that was assigned by our firm because the carrier invoked appraisal in a response to our lawsuit. Now we have to go to appraisal. Okay. Well, we're going to ask this guy to come in and do the appraisal for the insured side. 9 months go by. And we get a call saying, hey, are we appraising contents? It's been 9 months.
Right.
They haven't started.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, what's going on? and where's the debate here? Who's saying no? We're not appraising contents.
Right.
Like, that's the loss.
Are these guys qualified to do content?
Right.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Are they bringing in a contents expert? I mean, there's so much questionable. And there's no accountability there. There's no oversight. So, and then there's a risk that if you send a strongly worded letter to the appraisers and the umpire saying, get your stuff together, get this done. Well, now you're meddling, and now we're going to tattoo you with a bad appraisal award because, you ruffled my feathers. And
exactly. And
where's the appeal? Who are you appealing to?
That's exactly my point. It's like I tell my clients all the time. It's like, look, I can go in there and I can show some teeth and I can press and show them where they're wrong. But the moment that I force them into a decision prior to they're ready to make one, it's going to be the decision I don't want.
Right.
That's just human behavior.
Yeah.
John, I am all out of time. Will you come back?
Sure.
Man, I just don't think we even really scratched the surface. I think we got some good stuff here, but there's a whole lot of iceberg to get into.
Oh, for sure.
And I would love to talk more about this, and I would love to talk more about not just the appraisal process, but the claims process and the relationship between public adjusters and attorneys. Guys, if you're wanting to find more out about the Green Trial Law, I mean, that's also their website.
Green, Klein, Wood, and Jones. We are Dragon Slayers.
They are Dragon Slayers. If you have information that you want to pass off to them, they are very good. All you have to do is send it to info@greentriallaw.com. And if you don't send them all the information, that they will get back in contact with you and tell you what they need. Obviously, I want to recommend that you always consult with an attorney. Don't listen to anything I said on this show. Make sure you get an attorney to talk to you about your individual individual case, your individual rights, and what is going on with your individual case. And until next time, own your own story, or somebody else will.